Sid was in Rocket Town, feverishly working on the construction of a new airship, but when he spotted Nanaki covered in flesh wounds, he convinced him to take the time to let them heal. Nanaki followed his advice and watched with interest at the construction of the airship, which was close to completion, but was careful not to get in the way. When Nanaki finally realized that he had spent almost 2 years in the forest with the two Nebel bears, he couldn't believe it at first. Sid also seemed to have lost all sense of time due to his work, because even he was surprised that it had already been 2 years since the last time they had seen each other.
Time must lose all meaning if one lives a fulfilled life.
Nanaki learned that Bard had also been here relatively recently. He would have liked to have seen him again. He was sure that he would have been greeted just as warmly by Bard as he was by Sid, as though everything had happened just yesterday. One day, a cheerful Sid invited Nanaki on a small test flight now that the airship was practically finished. Nanaki accepted the invitation with pleasure.
If it falls, then that'll be that. Don't hate me for it, you hear?
That'll be that. Not about saying.
From the sky, it became apparent just how small the world really was. For Nanaki, who had travelled the world pretty much always on all fours, it was another big realization. He made a mental note to thank Sid for this memorable experience.
I must thank Sid for giving me the chance to see the world from this point of view. I will be spending several hundred years on this small world, perhaps even longer. There are still many facets of life which I do not know, much of which I have yet to see and learn.
Down on the ground, due to the seemingly infinite wilderness stretching out in all directions, he might have lost sight of his goal, but he now knew that the world wasn't quite as big as it seemed, and this knowledge alone gave him the courage to believe that maybe one day he would have seen and experienced everything.
The world is waiting for me.
What did you say? Quit exaggerating it. Hey, look over there.
What is it?
Look, it's Yuffie. What the hell is she doing out here?
Nanaki felt quite guilty reuniting with Yuffie. After all, he promised her during their farewell to gather as much information as he could about the Midgard disease. But really, the subject hadn't occupied him much at all. To hide his feelings of guilt, he tried to act cheerful, excited even. Soon, Sid flew off, leaving Nanaki alone with Yuffie. Yuffie said in her usual unique way that he should accompany her on her search for materia. However, Nanaki's opinion hadn't changed since their last meeting. Back then, he was mad at Yuffie's friend Yuri and told her out of spite that the materia she was searching for didn't exist. But he felt a little different about it now. He was now even more convinced that there was no materia to cure the Midgard disease, or geostigma as he had learned it was called back in Rocket Town. During his time in the forest, Yuffie had been searching in vain for such materia, and that was proof enough for him. Just because he had such a trust in Yuffie's abilities, he was sure of that. But when he told her that, she looked at him with sadness in her eyes.
I'm sorry. Of course I'll help you look.
Together with Yuffie, he entered a materia cave that lay in the snowfield to the north of Coral. However, their search in the ice-cold cave was unsuccessful.
There really isn't any here. I'm done.
You're giving up?
No, we're going to keep looking. Their hopes rest with me.
What do you mean?
This is the last cave we know that has materia in it. But let's go through them one more time, because we might have missed a spot. You know, there's something I understand now. While we're here, lots of time is passing by over there, right?
Yuffie looked off into the distance. She had taught the patients in Wutai martial arts. At first it was just the children, but then the adult patients started coming to her to consult about their physical condition and to exercise under her guidance.
You see, that illness really is contagious. But it doesn't spread to just anyone. It enters the space in people's hearts that are worrying, suffering, or have given up on their own lives. So, if they study martial arts and exercise their bodies, they wouldn't think about such things, would they? Just by being busy every day, they'll fall asleep in an instant at night, and won't be able to trouble themselves with strange thoughts. That's why I want us to do our best here too.
Yuffie looked at Nanaki and smiled.
What do you think?
I completely agree with you.
Of course you do!
Yuffie wrapped her arms around Nanaki's neck and pulled him up, so he had to stand on his hind legs.
Stop it!
Huh? I never noticed all these wounds on you. What have you been doing?
Nanaki thought about how he was going to explain it to her.
I am on a journey to record all forms of life to memory.
He actually presented it differently, but he had plunged into the cycle of life and lived it to the fullest, and he remembered each and every detail. He had experienced things which he, as an outsider and uninvolved observer, would never have understood. It had, however, come at a price, and had left scars on his body and soul.
Stop acting cool, you silly thing!
Yuffie once again wrapped her arms firmly around his neck, but this time she loosened her grip again.
Keep at it, Nanaki.
After separating from Yuffie, Nanaki wandered rather aimlessly around the world. Whenever he encountered animals, he wondered if he could somehow live with them. When he met people, he spoke to them without fear. From everything, whether right or wrong, you could learn the truth, it seemed to him. And thus, many new names crept into Nanaki's memory. Glitter, Dream Thief, Kai, Spinning Power, Love, Cries of the Trees. He gave all the important people and events names, including those with which he connected painful experiences, but there was always invaluable knowledge to be gained. Nanaki lived every day to the fullest, but a constant fear plagued him. No sooner had he spent his days alone again, even Gilligan reappeared and seemed to become stronger with each passing day. The more experiences he collected on his journey, the more he had to lose.
This must be the reason that Gilligan is growing more and more.
Gilligan's true form was the fear of loss. Now that Nanaki knew what it was, the unknown had lost its terror, and he didn't have to fear it anymore. Regardless, he still found himself trembling, and each time he needed longer to recover from the attacks. The question of why came to Nanaki, so much so that he feared he might be mistaken about Gilligan's true form. So he thought all over again about what Gilligan really was. But the only thing that came to him was the absolutely paralyzing fear. There was no doubt about it. That was what it was.
Gilligan, you say?
After a long time, Nanaki ran into Vincent again near the lake in the Forgotten City. Vincent listened patiently to Nanaki's theory.
I have an idea what it's all about.
What? Tell me.
Nanaki excitedly urged Vincent, as if he was about to jump on him to get a response from him.
Losses are inevitable. There's no way out of it. Loss leads to sadness. Just the thought of it leads to fear. However, and this is a strange thing, eventually you get used to it.
Maybe.
Gilligan comes from a distant future. A future that you subconsciously fear.
Huh?
All of the people you know. All events, phenomena, everything. Try to imagine a future in which everything exists only in your memories. There's no one left to share everything with.
Nanaki tried to imagine it. That moment, Gilligan began to stir in him. Nanaki endured the trembling and remained focused. He imagined himself running up a hill that overlooked Midgar. But when he finally got to the top, an incredible sight confronted him. Midgar was completely overgrown with plants, which he didn't even know the names of. However, he could also distinguish people, though among them there was no one he knew. Nevertheless, if he went and spoke to the people, perhaps someone would show interest and would listen to his story. But then there would probably be no one who would give a knowing nod and offer their own little anecdotes.
I'm all alone.
Nanaki trembled.
I have such a long lifespan that one day I will experience loneliness. And my fear of loneliness. Is that Gilligan?
To me, these are unnecessary worries about the future.
Don't make fun of me.
Vincent acknowledged Nanaki's little outburst with just a smirk.
Then imagine this. You'll never be lonely. Maybe you'll even have children someday.
Me? Have children? I just can't imagine that. When I try, I just think of the two Nibel bears.
Then how about this? You visit Midgar once a year. There, I will be waiting. And I will listen to your banal stories as if I have no interest at all.
Nanaki tried to imagine what Vincent had just told him. He could see Vincent's disinterested expression before him, and the trembling stopped. Gilligan seemed to have disappeared.
Looks like you've stopped trembling.
Yes, but Vincent, one day you too will.
That day will never come. I'm immortal. I do not age. Whether that is fortunate or misfortunate for me.
I see.
Nanaki thought about the loneliness that Vincent would one day face.
I may indeed live a long time, but certainly not forever. But Vincent, he... Hey, while I'm still alive, we should meet from time to time.
Vincent looked less than enthusiastic about the idea, but looked at Nanaki for a while.
Just once a year. It doesn't need to be any more often than that.
Huh?
Well, you're pretty annoying.
No sooner had he said that, Vincent lowered his eyes and hid his face behind the collar of his mantle. It was apparent that his shoulders were shaking slightly. That was probably the first time Nanaki had seen Vincent laugh.
Gilligan. Gilligan, you say?
Laugh all you want.
If you'll excuse me.
Vincent no longer held back and laughed out loud. At first, Nanaki tried to suppress it, but before long, he too burst out in laughter. It was the first time since the days of the Cetra that laughter could be heard in the Forgotten City.